Bridgerton costumes are not intended to be accurate, but they varied greatly from season to season. However, what caused this shift and the insane numbers behind what the costume department created for just one episode in season 4 will tell you all you need to know about the show. When season 1 premiered, the costume team, led by Ellen Morojnik, created 7,500 costume pieces. That's already a huge number that sounds impossible to top. Daphne alone had 104 dresses, each one carefully designed with hidden meanings and coded messages. The Bridgertons wore their signature powdery blues and silvers, while the Featheringtons screamed for attention in their citrus yellows and bright pinks. Everything felt intentional but restrained, as if the show were establishing rules for this fantasy Regency world, and it worked beautifully because viewers could follow the visual language. You knew a Bridgerton when you saw one, and you definitely knew a Featherington from a mile away. But here's where things get interesting. The show never intended to recreate the Regency era with historical accuracy. Ellen Morojnik described her vision as wanting the costumes to feel like opening a crisp, clean magazine today versus looking at yellowed pages from 150 years ago. She wanted everything to pop, to feel modern and aspirational, while keeping that Empire waist silhouette as the anchor. So even in season 1, they were already using fabrics and embellishments that didn't exist in 1813, like sequins and modern glitter. The corsets came from the legendary Mr. Pearl, and every single costume was made from scratch. Nothing was rented or borrowed, which is absolutely insane given the scale. Season 1 established family color palettes like a visual rulebook. The Bridgertons specifically wore Wedgwood blue, which was an expensive fabric color that only wealthy English people could afford in that era. Their pale, powdery aesthetic signaled their high status without screaming for attention. Morojnik explained that they're the prominent family of the social season, so their colors needed to feel like whispers of color. Meanwhile, the Featheringtons were the complete opposite. Portia Featherington dressed her daughters in loud, unflattering colors because she wanted them to be seen. They were new money trying too hard, and their costumes told that story instantly. However, what's fascinating is how each season brought a new costume designer, and that's when the visual evolution really kicked into gear. Season 2 introduced Sophie Canale as the lead costume designer, and she took what Morojnik built and pushed it further. Canale had a team of 120 people creating about 700 costumes every 6 weeks. She focused on making the characters more distinct from each other, especially the Bridgerton brothers. Benedict added artistic details, such as special tie pins, while Anthony's wardrobe darkened to reflect his emotional journey. The Sharma family brought Indian-inspired fabrics and jewel-tone colors, adding even more richness to the show's visual palette. Funnily enough, Season 2 also introduced themed balls with specific color stories, and the jewelry became more elaborate. The Bridgertons stuck with silver, the Featheringtons wore gold, and the Sharmas introduced rose gold. Every single button was chosen deliberately. Cast members actually competed on set about who had the best costume, and apparently, Phoebe Dynevor might have stolen her Mr. Pearl corset as a keepsake. The attention to detail was obsessive, with milliners, embroiderers, and dyers all working simultaneously to keep up with production demands. But then, Season 3 arrived, and John Glazer took over as costume designer, and this is where viewers began to notice a major shift. The costumes became noticeably more modern, more glamorous, and significantly more embellished. Penelope's transformation from wallflower to bombshell drew inspiration from Jessica Rabbit, and 1950s Hollywood icons like Lauren Bacall. Her emerald green glow-up dress at the first ball was bold and sexy in a way that felt different from anything in previous seasons. However, the fabric choices began to feel more contemporary. Some of Cressida's outfits used couture fabrics straight from recent fashion runways. The show drew on the 1950s, 1970s, and even modern haute couture to create looks that pushed beyond Regency-inspired fantasy. Colin came back from his travels looking like a rugged Marlboro man mixed with 1980s rock stars. The costume designers admitted they wanted to bring in influences from Ozzy Osbourne and the heavy metal scene, giving Colin leather belts and open shirts that showcased his sex appeal. This was a deliberate choice to age him up and show his worldliness, but it also marked a departure from the softer, more period-appropriate appropriate looks of earlier seasons. Eloise's costumes began channeling Audrey Hepburn in My Fair Lady, while Francesca drew inspiration from Grace Kelly and Katharine Hepburn's translucent 1930s shirts. The Season 3 costume team openly discussed using modern runway fabrics and dead stock from fashion houses they couldn't even name. They were incorporating contemporary design elements and pushing the boundaries of what Regency-inspired actually meant. Some fabrics had iridescent finishes and heavy sparkle that read as very 2020s on camera. Fashion critics started arguing that Season 3 crossed a line, with the combined effect of costumes, hair, and makeup feeling less like Regency fantasy and more like modern period cosplay. Interestingly enough, this evolution wasn't random. Each designer brought their own vision while honoring what came before. Glazer had actually worked as an assistant designer on Season 1 with Mirojnick, so he understood the foundation. But by Season 3, the show was confident enough in its identity to take bigger risks. The costumes became more about character storytelling and emotional impact than maintaining period consistency. When Penelope wore that green dress in Season 2, it was foreshadowing her Season 3 romance with Colin because yellow plus blue equals green. These symbolic choices mattered more than historical accuracy. However, the real explosion of maximalism came with Season 4, and this is where things get absolutely crazy. John Glazer returned as costume designer, but this time he had a masquerade ball to design for the very first episode, and the masquerade became his permission structure to throw every rule out the window and create pure fantasy. For the masquerade ball alone, the costume team created 172 unique looks. Season 1 made 7,500 pieces for the entire season, and Season 4 needed 172 costumes just for one scene. The hair and makeup team, led by Nick Collins, created approximately 160 wigs specifically for this ball. The scale is mind-blowing, and it represents everything the show has become since Season 1. The masquerade had a midnight in a woodland forest theme inspired by Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream. Glazer explained that they looked at historical masquerades and realized people dressed incredibly eclectically, so they decided to put everything they possibly could into the scene. It didn't matter what period the costumes referenced, as long as they looked fantastic. There were characters dressed as chess pieces, a sheep, a rabbit, a horse, the sun, Charles I, Mark Antony, and Cleopatra, and dual Zeuses. The costume team pulled from the 1930s, 1940s, and 1950s and mixed it all in one chaotic, visually stunning sequence. But what's even more dramatic is Queen Charlotte's masquerade wig. This thing is an absolute work of art and possibly the craziest costume piece the show has ever created. The wig features a heart-shaped outer cage crafted entirely from hair and adorned with silver leaf. Inside the cage sits a replica of the nuptial crown that King George gifted Charlotte, also made from hair. The design pays homage to the cosmos and represents Charlotte's love for George, referencing his passion for astronomy. The entire wig is meant to symbolize the universe, with stars and celestial elements woven throughout. It took 6 to 8 weeks to make all the elements, and Queen Charlotte had 19 wigs total for Season 4. The process of creating this masquerade sequence was massive. A team of 6 people worked simultaneously on Sophie's lady in silver dress, continuously layering handmade frills onto Italian silver lame chiffon, hand-placed with sequins. The dress needed to sparkle more than anything else at the ball because it's the centerpiece of Benedict and Sophie's Cinderella-inspired love story. Glazer emphasized that it had to be true silver because no one else at the masquerade wore silver with that much sparkle. The gloves became a crucial plot point, and instead of using period-accurate leather, they chose old satin for extra shimmer. Funnily enough, Benedict's costume took the opposite approach. His look was deliberately understated, inspired by Joseph Fiennes in Shakespeare in Love. The costume team wanted viewers to remember Benedict, not what he was wearing. He arrives late on horseback, throws off his coat, grabs a mask from a footman, and enters the ball looking effortlessly cool in head-to-toe black. The contrast between his dark, moody costume and Sophie's shimmering silver creates instant visual chemistry. The masquerade also permitted characters to reveal their inner selves through costume. Penelope and Colin dressed as matching pirates, paying homage to their Season 3 romance rather than following the book, which had Penelope wear a leprechaun costume. Eloise came as Joan of Arc, the perfect choice for a Regency feminist. Lady Violet dressed as Titania, the fairy queen, and she was originally going to be Queen Elizabeth I until they decided that felt too severe for her character. The costume team tried a Georgian character too, but that didn't work either. The process shows how much thought went into every single choice. Interestingly, Season 4 also changed the entire color palette because it takes place in autumn rather than spring or summer. Glazer eliminated white from the costumes almost entirely, even making the men's shirts pastel colors instead of crisp white. They use navy instead of black and mix hues, so the costumes complement the warmer toned autumn leaves rather than bright green lawns. The colors are sharper and more heightened, like the difference between a blurred flower garden and the crisp focus of fall foliage. The jewelry department created over 700 pieces for Season 4, pulling heavily from 1940s and 1950s designs. Queen Charlotte's collection included giant jeweled necklaces, rings, and brooches that pushed maximalism even further. The embellishment techniques became richer and more sculptural, contributing to an overall haute couture aesthetic that feels worlds away from Season 1's powdery whispers. However, not everyone at the masquerade went full fantasy. Francesca and John Sterling wore simple evening wear with half masks because, as Glazer put it, she and her husband don't have that much imagination. But even John's mask had a subtle Celtic tweak with a tartan pattern, honoring his Scottish heritage. Every costume told a story, even the understated ones. The production designer, Alison Gartshaw, created an entire fantasy environment for the ball, with ombre drapes that transitioned from dark midnight blue to twilight tones. A team of people glued individual gems onto hundreds of meters of fabric so everything would sparkle under the lights. The floor was painted with a skyscape featuring the Cassiopeia constellation, the constellation of love, as a hidden Easter egg. White florals made from ivy, twigs, and birds' nests covered the space, making it feel like servants had gathered everything from the Bridgerton estate. So, what actually changed from Season 1 to Season 4 is scale, confidence, and creative freedom. Season 1 established a beautiful fantasy world with clear rules and whispered elegance. Season 2 refined those rules while adding cultural richness and character specificity. Season 3 started pushing boundaries with modern influences and bolder design choices, and Season 4 forgot the rules entirely and created 172 costumes for one ball, complete with a wig made from a cage of hair containing the universe. The evolution shows a production that became more confident in its identity with each season. The designers stopped worrying about maintaining strict period consistency and focused instead on emotional impact and visual storytelling. Where Season 1 wanted viewers to understand family hierarchies through subtle color differences, Season 4 wants viewers to gasp at the sheer spectacle of creativity. And honestly, both approaches work for what each season was trying to accomplish. Season 1 needed to build a world and establish visual language. Season 4 gets to celebrate that world by throwing the biggest, most elaborate party possible. The masquerade gives the show permission to be its most theatrical self, and the costume team absolutely grabbed that opportunity and ran with it.